46 p.m.
All right, let's call the Orono Town Council Committees meeting to order for Monday, January 22nd. Roll call shows the councilors Powers, Marks, Kenny, and Laraway. Myself, Councilor Wingard, our president in council chambers. Councilor Berthasol will be joining us remotely, and Councilor Demerit should be joining us in person shortly. First item on our committee meetings tonight is Comprehensive Planning Committee, chaired by Rob Lara.
So the comprehensive plan process is sort of due to be starting soon. In fact, I think at the beginning of fiscal year 24, the plan was that we start doing this in January this year. Mitch sent us a memo giving us a little sort of preview of what he's going to discuss tonight. But first off, we don't have a full-time planner, and so some of I think our plans might be shifting a little bit. Mitch has brought forward that we do have, or rather that staff is suggesting that we consider contracting with IOB Community Planning and Consulting, with whom we have been contracting part-time for our planning currently through Isabel. And we have received a proposal also attached in the agenda. So I'm sure everybody's read it, but I guess I'll kick it over to Mitch to tell us a little bit more about what this is and what we're considering here.
Sure. So I think there are a couple of pieces to this. The first one obviously is the comprehensive plan is due to come up and start. And we had talked about that previously when we started the conversations back during the budget season. We didn't add anything because at the time we had a full-time planner. The process was that the full-time planner was going to undertake this with the comprehensive plan committee. Obviously that changed. And when we contracted with Isabel, she is 20 hours a week working with the planning board, and this was not part of that contract. There was some conversations about whether she would be interested in that at the original time. And she certainly is and has some experience doing that. I think that the pieces of this puzzle are we need to start this process. We can't do it in our current setup. So the question is a discussion about A, how do we move forward? And B, what other things need to happen along with this process, meaning for the comprehensive plan, you folks need to create a comprehensive plan committee that would guide whomever is kind of doing the heavy lifting, which would have been our planner, but in this instance, looking at the possibility of using Isabel to do that. Other than that, I mean, I don't know how familiar you guys are with that process. I have high-level knowledge and certainly can answer some questions, and if there are questions I can't answer, certainly I'm willing to go back and find the answers and come back and give them to you. So yes.
I was just wondering, when you say we need to form a comprehensive plan committee, you mean apart from the council comprehensive plan committee,
Yes.
which we're currently sitting in? We need a broader one, right?
So there's, you guys would form a committee that oversees the comprehensive plan process. Similar to kind of council overseeing the direction of, staff in the town, this committee would represent folks in different individuals from across sector of the community that would help kind of guide that forward. Once that's done, the comprehensive plan would come back to you folks for approval. So you have say in it, it's just another kind of overarching group that does that. In the past, the last comprehensive plan we had, I think our whole planning board was involved in that, and then other members. The planning board is a pretty good cross-section, and I think that's why they used it. But I will tell you, at the time, the planning board was pretty slow, and they actually used planning board meetings to run some of these meetings because we didn't have the things coming to the planning board that we do now. So that's probably not the best direction, but I think having folks from the planning board makes sense because they are also have a knowledge of this that's different than your average everyday resident. But also the key to really doing a good job of this is having a good cross-section, because you want those voices heard. and what comes back has really kind of worked together to create kind of how we move forward. And I think that's one thing that in talking to people is really an important one, is having that cross section.
So my understanding is that the last time we did this, it took place over, is it true that it took place over a couple of years?
Yeah, so
And
it's
how
about a
long?
year and a half process.
Okay.
Yep.
And when is the deadline for this plan to get in?
So it's every 10 years is when you do that. So I don't know that there's a hard and fast deadline, but I think this is the time that we should be looking at it. I also think in a lot of the conversations that you folks have had and things that we're hearing, this is also a good time to look at what the community wants to look like. Cause I mean, this is the place where, you know, you can look at ordinances, you can look at lots of different things that were there 10 years ago, put in place, and see, are there new directions we need to go? Are there, you know, are there different things that we need to look at? Because things have changed over 10 years, wants and needs, you know, how your makeup of your community, what things have been added and how has that affected your community? Are there things that we need to change in a different way to really look at those to make sure that it's going in the direction and guiding us for the next 10 years, really. It's a guiding document.
No, I'm very excited about the potential of this, just to open up a little bit more imagination around sort of what the town can look like. I mean, as you just described, this is sort of a time to think about what we want this town to look like in a much longer term way than sometimes we are really able to with the day-to-day minutia when we get into these meetings. I mean, we're still thinking at like a larger level than staff is, who's really taking care of so much of the details, implementing the vision of the town. But I guess I'm wondering, well, actually, before I say any more about what I'm wondering, I feel like I'm taking a lot of space. Does anybody else on council have thoughts, reactions about anything that's been talked about?
Yes, Ken, how big, so planning board is kind of, are they willing and able to still be part of a significant part of this? And then,
So typically, planning board members are interested in that. I did have a conversation with Phil Rock, and he is very interested in being part of that. He did chair the last one, so he has experience with this. He said he was open to that discussion again.
then how much broader is the? Cause I'm thinking of like we did a visioning thing with the RSU 15 years ago, and it was kind of massive. There's a lot of people involved.
So there's two pieces to this, right? There's the committee, but then there's a huge community input. I mean, I think the last time they had 5 separate community engagement, like public community engagement, and then multiple opportunities to add and come to the meetings if they had questions, things like that. So, and I know that what Isabel put before you is heavy on that because she recognized that that was important. And certainly, I think that's part of that. But I think the balance is that committee really helps kind of steer the direction. So having enough voices so you represent the community, but not so many that becomes really cumbersome of how do we move forward.
But I was gonna ask, do we need to commission a demographic study of the community before this? Assuming that the demographics change in a decade, or is there publicly available information that provides us with a kind of a cross-section of stuff?
So that's all part of what your consultant would do. So the first 3 to 4 months is really understanding where Orono sits today. Like all the pieces that are involved, demographics, housing, what's the stock, what is ground zero of it, where are we starting today? That's really their initial push. And then once they get that, that's understanding that and then looking at what are the places that we need to look at, what are the concerns that people have, and you know, whether that's things that you guys have given a charge to that committee to say these are some things that we think should be looked at, whether that's things that staff or planning board or people have seen that, hey, maybe this is a good thing, or whether that's things that the public bring forward to say we're really challenged by these things.
I will make a comment also, I'm really happy to see that
Yep.
Isabella,
Isabel.
that she's open and interested in this. I did watch it. I haven't been to many planning board meetings, but I watched one the other night and I thought she really does a nice job. So that's encouraging. I think that.
I would just add in working with her, what makes her kind of unique in this is that she now has a pretty good understanding of what we do, right? Because she has to be in that, but she is a fresh set of eyes. And she's come with a whole bunch of things that, looking at the process that we take with the planning board and looking at different ways that we can make it more transparent, make people understand why decisions are being made. Because I think that's one of the challenging things with that piece is that you get there, they're following the rules that are set through the comprehensive plan. And so it's hard when somebody doesn't like something that's happening to be able to say, I don't like that. Well, the plan, the rule is already set and they can't not follow it. So I think this is obviously a time to look at those things, but I think she does a really good job with that and has some experience doing this in some bigger communities, but also some smaller.
Yeah, I was happy to see the range of sort of population that she's dealt with. I mean, Damariscotta has 2.2 thousand versus 20,000 in Saco and Brunswick.
I was just wondering, the one thing I wasn't clear when I was looking at this and we were talking about, her plan is detailed and great and it's terrific to me. But selection though of the comprehensive plan committee, it's large committee that will include planning board folks and others. Is that part of what she helps with, or are we charged with putting that in place before she gets here, or how do those two things sync up?
So realistically, you folks are in charge of putting that in place. Certainly, if you were looking for help, recommendations of maybe people that fit in certain categories, staff could help with that. But that's something that can happen concurrently. It doesn't have to. And to be fair, probably there would be an initial meeting once that committee is put together with the person that was kind of running that. And then the time that they were putting into getting all the basically the backstory, there really wouldn't be a lot of meetings. It would just be, them collecting information and getting that all together to then come back. So, it might be 2 or 3 months after that goes together before they meet again, just because they need the information and that would be a collection time, so.
They need to be there, like in this phase one, where she was running a kickoff meeting with the comprehensive plan committee. So for her to even engage phase one, and she's talking about wanting to do phase one in February.
Yeah. Yeah.
So are we being asked to put a committee together in 2 weeks' time, or what's our?
So I think this was put together in a rough, based on, we had talked about January, obviously. It can be altered. I think that more than anything, just understanding time, kind of chunks of time, not necessarily dates, but I think going from that January date was what she was going off. But I think at the end of the day, you would want to have that because that communication and understand kind of sends her off to be able to make sure she has the data that people might need if there are things that aren't on the specific demographics that she might want to pull out that are current, that people need to understand if there's a specific direction that you want.
So we need to, our 2 decisions as a council need to be to get busy creating this committee soon, because she needs it, and also to decide if we're hiring her or not.
Right.
Those are our 2 big questions.
And I think that the piece of this is that, yes, these things have to happen one way or the other, whether it's her or not. That this process needs to kind of get going, and I understand there's tons going on, and I think part of the challenge here is that the heavy lift is probably putting the committee together. But then once that happens, there's really a downtime because most of that is with whomever is kind of collecting the data up front. There's probably 3 months worth of work that doesn't involve anything but collecting data.
Just thinking out loud here to the council, I'm wondering if, obviously we would be the ones deciding on the contract, but would people be open to the thought of if we chair this committee with probably somebody from the planning board, maybe somebody from the planning board? And I think they would probably be of the same mindset that we want to be as open and diverse and all of that, I mean, is that something we'd consider sort of not outsourcing, but letting the people that are gonna be doing that work that are probably more entrenched in it than we are, sort of, here's what we're looking for, go do, or do we think that we have to be the ones that select the committee? Just, that's a question, kind of an open question.
By charter, do we legally have to be the ones who, or by any ordinance, do we need to be the ones that choose, or could we do what we were suggesting?
You just have to approve.
Yeah, you just have to approve who the people are.
People, but I would say you need to hire the contractor first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, so this, if you went with Isabel, it could be on the 12th, and then between then and the March meeting, you could get committee members lined up for voting.
I like the idea of us having, sorry, Dan, did you have something?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Go
Yeah.
for it, please.
I think Isabel's fantastic. I've watched her in a couple planning board meetings. I like the material she puts together. I like her proposal a lot, and she seems to understand the council prioritizes communication engagement in a way that I think is gonna be a good fit for us, because this is an important project in terms of community engagement. And I wonder, as we finish our search, we're getting our search spun up. We'll have that process going on in the spring. So it's gonna be a lot to ask of people to do search, then planning, welcome a new town manager. So there'll be a lot of moving parts, but I like it. It's kind of, I do ask if Kyle were still here, would we need a consultant or would we?
So the plan was that Kyle was going to act as that in that role.
Yep.
And that was why we didn't budget anything outside of it. And this.
And then if we have an existing contract with Isabel. Yep. And I just question or wonder, I personally would be very happy to move forward with Isabel, because I like the way I like the way she works. As a counselor, I ask, I just ask us to think about what is our responsibility in terms of procurement process for this. I mean, if she's our employee, de facto, in some respects, I get more comfortable with it. I just kind of want to understand. I just want to have a discussion about what's the right move for.
Do we go out to bid or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a,
Don't know.
I mean, if it was my company and I was hired, I'd be like, oh, sign her up, she's good, But I just want to take a step to just have a conversation about it.
Is that also a staff question, though? I'm assuming you wouldn't be bringing this to us if you felt like we needed to legally go through a procurement process here?
Well, as Mitch mentioned, that she's in a unique position of being a part-time employee that also does this kind of work. And the price is within the town's budget, it just seems like a very good fit at this time.
In a process like this, there's no legal requirement, we put this out to bid.
No, I mean, you have the ability to do sole source.
Yeah.
Stuff.
This is the best deal you've ever gotten for a plan, comprehensive plan.
This is very reasonable.
Okay.
Very reasonable. Timestamp,
Harbor's at 250.
what's that?
Our Harbor's spending 250.
250,000. Hope Isabel's not much.
That was blurred or.
Yeah. Shut down the feed.
I was thinking, you're right about, like, there's a lot going on at once with
Yeah.
the manager search and all the other things, but I can say also that we are definitely gonna have more people volunteer to serve on the advisory town manager search committee than we can take.
Yeah.
And the size of the committee we're looking for, so that is also a potential pool of people that we can reach back out to and say, although we can't invite you to do this, we would invite you to put your name in the hat for, however that goes. For this, I think, same people may be interested in both, so in a way that may be good, that we've already been asking who in town is interested in this. Hopefully we would do that again, the planning board would do that again and put some kind of.
So one of the things I would suggest, and this is a suggestion, is that certainly people that are willing to serve are the best ones, because they're gonna show up. But realistically is finding the right people that fit in certain places to make that a complete round thing. And I think sometimes becomes a challenge when you have lots of people that want to do it, and if we all live in the same neighborhood, that may not be all, you don't need that same perspective you need one of those per sector or two of those, but you don't need 10.
Which would be my next question. Do we as a council have data we can see about who served on the last one and what the categories were of the kind of representation we were looking for? Is that was created that would guide us in our process now?
Yep, so everything is on, the whole comprehensive plan is online and it has the information. I have a couple of copies. I can also, I don't think it spells out anywhere, this person was on there because they knew a lot about trees or whatever. But I can look and see kind of a general thing. But I think like anything, and I can give you some guidance. There are documents that talk about putting that together and what components are important to make that a successful one. But it's a lot of the same stuff, different neighborhoods, different representation from businesses and representation from, folks that are having an engineering background or having some sort of botany background, biology. Some of those things are helpful because when you look at a lot of these different things and talk about stormwater, and these things can get reasonably complicated for somebody that doesn't have some sort of background. So trying to match those things with also folks that, have neighborhood concerns or things like that, make a lot of sense. But certainly staff can help kind of package, give you some background on what was there. I think that like I said, the planning board is a pretty good representation, and that's kind of how that's put together, is figuring out what pieces are missing and what, so that's why it was a little bit more of an easy button when they did the last one. I'm not sure timing wise if the planning board members are definitely in for one meeting a month right now with 2 projects a meeting, that all of them are gonna want to be able to serve in that capacity.
Please.
So you said you did talk with Phil about it? Yes. Chair of the planning board, right?
Yep.
Will this proposal come before them, before it comes before us for a final adoption or anything like that, or will they, no?
This would be you guys decide, I mean, you as the council control the process.
Yeah.
Because it's gonna come back to you once it goes, you're just creating this committee to do the work, to come back to you to then look at it and approve it. So obviously, planning board is important to have involved because they are intricately involved in that, what comes out of that, but.
So can I ask Cornell, if we do not need the consultant here to dive into the details of this proposal, can we put this on the agenda for our next business meeting, approve it? That procedure doesn't violate a public hearing or anything.
Oh, I don't think so.
Would you be comfortable doing that next week?
So just so I'm clear, you would like Isabel to come next week?
No, I don't believe that she's.
Okay.
That was my question.
Oh.
I don't believe we need her here if the council is comfortable not having her here. But I would like to move as quickly as possible to get the ball rolling.
Okay.
So if we could just.
It'll be on the 12th.
Yes.
So at the regular council meeting to approve this,
Isabel is our
Yes.
contractor to do it.
Yes.
I mean, I would invite her to come if she wants to, just.
oh yeah, she's more than willing to, I just wanted to make sure that I communicate that.
And I assume maybe at some like soon committees meeting after that, we would be able to have a more in-depth discussion with her about sort of expectations, process, all the rest.
Because although she's not talked to you, she's put together a proposal that looks like such, but that can be worked with to understand. And if you wanted to do that, we can certainly work through that piece.
So one thing I would like from Isabel would be her advice on who should be on this committee. So advice from staff would be great, advice from Isabel would be great. She's obviously worked with a lot of these committees.
Yep.
So I took notes on the things you mentioned,
Yep.
categories to represent, but I would like to hear from her also on what should we be looking for as we're creating this committee to make sure we're hitting the groups that we should be looking.
So just so I'm clear, is that something that you would like her to sit down and talk to you folks with? Is that all right if I work with her and we come up with a list and she brings that to you in an email or something to that effect? How do
Yeah. Communication, I just would love to hear.
Yeah.
Staff and what else.
Yeah. Okay.
Can we have a time date by which as a council, we feel like we need to get this committee in place so that Isabel can get moving? Because I also feel like we need to hold ourselves accountable.
March meeting.
Yeah.
By the March meeting, we should have.
Yeah.
That sounds like.
Just for the record too, I think she's given us a good looking quote.
Yeah. Yeah.
For all the same reasons. It would seem like a pretty natural fit to me.
Right. Is there anything in there that you guys would have, because what I would hate to do is that you say, I approve this, what we've got in front of us, and then you see something that you would like, and certainly we can have this conversation, or if it's missing.
Sarah's gonna find something. Do you notice?
My point is that she put this together without any, and so I wouldn't want her to, you approve this and you say, well, I'd like 7 more of these that would actually cost more money and us all in that, So, and I will tell you that we can do it within the budget, but that means that theoretically that planning budget will not go down next year.
Mhm.
Okay, the other, it will a little bit, because the other piece of this, what makes it really tight, is that we were paying Kyle out of the TIF, which we can't do
Right
now. So so it will work. I've run the numbers, and based on what she's doing currently for numbers, it should work. I might come back to you and suggest that anything that's left over, we carry over to next year and put it in the comprehensive, so that, there's a little bit of leeway
And that
there.
has nothing to do with economic development, is that what that means?
Yes. Yeah.
Feels like it has a lot.
It does feel like that, but that is one thing that is not.
It's a hard line to take, Ron.
So, I wish there was a way I could tell you that, but it isn't. Yeah.
Gotcha.
I don't know if I don't think it's required. I wouldn't ask for, unless someone feels strongly to ask the planning board to give us any kind of formal, not suggesting that, but I think it would be gracious to make sure that they're aware of it in terms of the proposal and what, just, maybe throw it on their agenda for their meeting in January, or I don't know, but I just like the idea of them having awareness before they see us pass it. And
Do you, I'm thinking timing, because they won't meet again till you,
they're not gonna meet until after our February meeting?
yes.
Okay,
I certainly could send the proposal to Phil so he can see it.
Yep.
And as the chair, and then he could give you some
Yeah.
feedback and had concerns, at least that way it's.
That'd be great.
I think that'd be great
Yeah.
for
And then-
Phil, and the planning. Right, so.
I'd love it if we emailed it to them all and just say, hey, at our February meeting, if they could be invited to our meeting if they had questions. Yeah,
That's a great idea.
So how about I do this? I send it to Phil and say, the recommendation was that you folks would like the planning board to look at this. And just be aware that it's happening. This is the direction they're leading in. If there are any comments, we need them by before this date, is that?
yeah, that'd be fantastic.
That works.
The
Yeah.
other members.
Yeah.
That we would be in either of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really helpful. And maybe also to say, as we're looking forward to creating the committee.
Yeah.
What do folks on the planning board feel is important to be represented in the committee? Same as I want to hear from staff and I'd like to hear from Isabel, all of this is really helpful.
Yeah.
To me, since it's my first time doing this.
Thank you very much.
So just back to my question, do we not, will we consider that still or not consider that the planning board and Isabel may kind of not be responsible, but kind of be responsible for like us having our input on what we want, which again, I think is gonna be probably exactly what they want. And they may have some specific knowledge about what they need versus what we might want as well. And I guess, what are your, I feel like a little bit, they know, especially probably Isabel, having done this and other communities, knowing sort of what she needs for people at the table that would fit best for accomplishing this. I feel like ours might just be, obviously we want to be broad and inclusive as much as possible, but it may be more specialized than that, and I would kind of look to them for the expertise.
I'd love to have Rob as the chair of this committee for us to have, as much as, be that liaison to the extent, come to us with what, he thinks they need. I turn to you, but I definitely don't want to box you out of that.
Yeah.
Box us out of it, but I guess I also don't want to make sure we don't agree to something that restricts your ability to.
No, I'm. Some of this still feels a little nebulous to me about exactly how we're gonna be engaging. where our input comes into place. I guess that's part of what I think would be worth us having a more in-depth discussion with maybe just Isabel and maybe Phil, and the rest of the planning board. Just about what this looks like as far as like, how did the council interact in an ongoing way in the process as it was, developing? I also think, at least in the initial step here, when we're talking about developing the committee.
So do you mean that has to precede approving the proposal?
I don't think so, no, but I think as we get into the content, and some of the specifics of it, I mean, just, we just have to develop a system where there's a clear understanding on both sides of, how often things are being communicated to us about what's happening. What avenues do we have to give input as things are ongoing? I guess with an eye toward just this first step of developing a committee, after approving or concurrent to approving this proposal. Yes, I'm interested in seeing sort of what is brought to us and where we think there might also be gaps that maybe, we're just as representatives of the interests of the town in just another fashion, what things we might think are missing in what's developed, where we might give input before things get too far along. But again, the process still feels a little nebulous to me, but I'm excited to see sort of how this goes, as long as we're all clearly communicating.
So it sounds like it might be helpful to just have maybe a little bit of a educational, whether it's Bill that's done it before or, a group that comes in and says, this is kind of the process, this is how many times we've met in the past. I think a lot of these things are kind of determined by the committee and what the direction is of how this works. And some that are more, communities that are really more complex might have a much grander and heavier lift, and some that are less complex may be different. So I think it sounds like maybe before you create the part of this, maybe the next step is obviously approve this, get some idea of types of people that we'd like to have at the table, and maybe some sort of educational opportunity for you folks. The question I have, and I don't know the answer to this, is meetings are at a premium.
Yeah.
These days. So how, if we have a March, you'd want that, if you have to approve a board by a committee by March, how do we work back? Considering the fact that are you gonna have one more are you gonna have another meeting in February before your committee meeting before your?
We have the meeting on the 12th where
That's the actual council
Yes.
meeting, yeah.
then we would have the time between the 12th and our March meeting, March
Okay.
4th.
So a month-ish.
So we would have to do it
Pretty much the meeting after that
the next closest committee.
to give you some of that. And then, does that give you enough time, do you think?
So-
We did the first meeting after the. Is that?
It's a holiday.
So we don't have the 19th, so it's all the way to the 26th, so it'll give us only 2 weeks.
I mean, the other option is looking to see if we can do something before the February meeting, that it was the
Does
fifth.
it happen February 5th? That.
I don't know what's on the list. Things.
It's filling up.
That's okay.
Couldn't we have Isabel participate by Zoom meeting on the 12th and just give a quick overview of, the timeline of the number of public sessions, generally how much the committee will meet. Usually it's once a month for a year, and the makeup of committees as she sees it, and perhaps an ad that has been used that we could put out. So from the 12th, we can get going on getting a list of interested.
And maybe we can put together a document via email, so that makes some sense, and we can maybe put it together like some sort of document that kind of spells out, these are the types of people that have been on in the past. This is, kind of leading up to that, so that you have that information, and then circle back after what more information.
I'd be grateful for that. Additionally, just because it would give us a chance to ask her questions directly. So, that would be wonderful if we could go forward with that.
Just to like to answer those questions, I mean, my first thought, Leo, is when reaching out to the planning board and ask them what categories of folks do they think need to be represented. I'd also be happy to ask them who do they think is in those categories who might be willing to serve, like by specific names would also be helpful to come to us. My instinct is not to completely outsource it, only because I think this is one of the few times where council actually has much of a role for a while. Like we create the committee and then we really, it goes on its own, as you explained it, for quite a bit of time before it maybe comes back to us again for more involvement. And so I'm a little bit thinking if it's one of the few times that we have input, I wouldn't want to completely give that away. That's just an initial thought.
And just to be clear, obviously you can have somebody on that committee, you get to make that decision. So and report back on those meetings, or even as residents obviously could go to those meetings. So I don't want it to sound like they take off and they're doing it and they never come back. You know?
Disclose location.
Yeah, yeah.
Bob could go to every one meeting and report back to us all the
Depends on
time.
what it
and
is.
it's relevant if you want
Right.
to, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. Thank you. Really helpful. The whole question I have is just the timeline when you mentioned that it needs to be done every 10 years. That was my assumption, but I also looked at the date when our last one was done, and by that it would be expiring in fall of this year of 24. And when I looked on the state website, it actually said every 12 years, and that ours wouldn't expire until 26. Can you clarify the 10-year versus 12-year?
So when you think about it, if we start now and it's a year and a half, you're almost to the 12 years.
Right, so it is
So-
12 years, but
so-
it started in 10, but it finishes in 12, is that? how-
Yes, so that's kind of the range. They talk about a 10-year plan. And then they give you the extra 2 years to complete it is really what happens. So there's that range in there. And it's,
We're pretty well, we're on schedule.
yes, we are. And starting a little bit later. I think also some of it too is where, when you get to a certain stage, you try not to land in the community engagement stage in the middle of the summer or the, in weird times. So some of that is trying to plan that out a little bit. And I would want to look at that too, to see what that looked like. So
As we push Isabel's timeline forward.
it just moves everything else. So I don't,
Further on.
yeah, so I, yeah,
Moving 2 months because it's summertime in there.
right. And I don't, yeah, I haven't had a long conversation with her about the exact timeline, but yes, everything pushes. So those are the things you just have to think about.
Do we know, I know we're bad at this, right? But I mean, do we know, is the university in the midst of any strategic planning or things like that we are either been invited to or would align with our own process?
So nothing that I am aware of, currently, although
They're always
Plan-
planning.
they're
planning. They're always.
but I would, they're a stakeholder that, I don't know that we necessarily would get somebody on the board, but maybe somebody that teaches there,
Yeah.
I think there's a connection to understand what things are going on there. And certainly I know that there was outreach in the past,
Yeah.
when we were talking to stakeholders about, well, so what are your plans? So that's always in the, part of that process, and frankly, part of our process.
Yeah.
Whether it happens publicly or not, we're always trying to understand how we
Yeah.
exist together.
Okay.
Very good. This is a lot of things.
Yes, excellent.
Much appreciated. Is there anything else from anybody on these items? Oh, yeah. Any public comment on this? Yes, Lori.
I
Please.
think it sounds great. I work for an organization that does comprehensive planning. And most towns don't have someone in-house and they don't have someone that knows their town. And so it's concerning to find out that we lost our planner, but great to hear that we have someone that already knows our town and that you're confident about how she interacts. I missed a little bit of the discussion about how she would be funded versus how Kyle is funded, but it sounds like you got it all under control and I'm looking forward to participating.
Wonderful. Thanks.
Are you concerned that it seems like every town planner lives in Cumberland County? Is that seem odd to you? But Kyle lives in
The
Portland.
concern is, we have to, I tend to always look back at how we got to where we are.
Yeah.
And the University of Maine closed the program, the one that Sophie got her master's in.
Yeah.
That trained people to work for municipalities.
Yeah.
And so all throughout the state, we do not have people coming out of college thinking that's what they'll do.
Yeah. But USM does, yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
USF has a program, but it's not necessarily, we're specifically geared to municipal planning for municipal leadership. And so all across the state, and I see this like in with my hat, my EMDC hat, is that the competition, I guess EMD sent me like when I was new in the job about a year and a half ago, they sent me to a planning conference. Why? Because they kept trying to hire planners and they hired them, they left. Which Orono had when I was on the council here. We kept trying to hire planners and then they'd find a better job somewhere else. And part of us was like, what's wrong with us? Well, there's nothing wrong with us. There's just way more jobs available than there are people to fill them with the skills to fill them. Same with like town managers, right? We're really lucky to find someone who's got the experience, walk right into this interim job because it's really hard to fill these spots. And so EMDC has open planning spots and what's all over the state, planners leave one job to go to the next job when it looks a little better. It's less of a commute. It's not often that it's more money.
Yeah.
Right? Although certainly more money helps you snatch one from another, just like we have with the police and fire here. You know, you offer a little more money, you could snatch from somebody else, but then there's only a certain amount of time they'll stick around, then there's something else that they want. And it's a buyer's market for them. So is that what they call it? Yeah, they're the ones looking for
Yeah.
they're looking for a job. So with the fact that we don't have a planner, it's good that you have a plan. That doesn't mean, oh yeah, we'll fill this planning job and they'll run our comprehensive plan. I don't think that would not be realistic. What you're doing now seems very realistic. And I know that EMDC gets called all the time. And we only have so many people. We're just brought on a new person. There's only so many comprehensive plans they can do. And they're doing a great job. I'm very impressed with the people they brought on but there's a lot of churn all around the state.
Yeah.
So Kyle or other people would prefer to live down there, maybe because their partners can find a job somewhere. Right? So yeah, it's not that, you know, that housing is more expensive there, but there's more jobs.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah, so it's great that you already have somebody set up that could do this work.
Yeah.
Well, that you like.
Well, appreciate your perspectives on it. And Sonia, I realized I didn't really look to you. Did you have any input on this? It's all right, either way.
No, every time that I had something I wanted to say, somebody else said it. And so I've been really content to just listen and let this go. But I am here. I don't have my camera on all the time, but I've been here. Hi, friends.
Wonderful. And then did we have any public comment online?
No hands raised online.
All right, appreciate it. All right, I guess that's the end of comprehensive plan implementation / whatever else committee.
And I would just tell you, we do have hard copies if you want to look at, but it's online as well.
Yeah.
The whole comprehensive.
Yep.
I'd love to see one.
Does it say who the authors are on that? In there? Like everyone on the committee?
It has all the committee and Evan did the last run and technically he was
Okay.
a contractor.
So, I mean, just getting that information would be just helpful, I think, for understanding what the makeup was used before, whether it changes or not, but it's safe to say that would give us a good kind of.
Sounds good.
The next section is finance and operations.
Yeah, it was gonna be me, I guess. We have a proposed ordinance amendment, section 231, related liability for claims of harassment or discrimination. This came to us on January 8th. We've had guidance from our attorney that suggested this might better fit in our internal controls manual. We are now still looking at making it an ordinance. There's been, which Sarah shared an edit. I had sent a request in the 11th hour here, so I'm not sure. I might ask Cornell, maybe. I'm not sure or maybe Dan, if you want to kind of how to proceed with where we're at on this. So you did get a response back, I think, on Sarah's edits.
Yeah.
We're discussing that out loud. That's what I would like to clarify. I wasn't clear on what that you talk about out loud from the attorney's opinions at all. So I'm a little confused now.
I'll give you my understanding. My understanding is that we can discuss the various pieces of language that have been either proposed by counselors or amended by the attorney. What we cannot discuss is the rationale that the attorney has shared with us about why he suggested certain changes, because that may impact our bargaining, which would be something that we would keep to executive session. So the language itself, I think we could say, oh, I like this, I don't like this. This is the reason why I, as an individual counselor, may or may not like this. I think what we cannot discuss are the reasons that our attorney laid out for his changes. I know it's an imperfect system, but that's kind of where I fell out.
And do we have the opportunity to just discuss it in executive session, the part that the lawyer gave us advice on, or
Well,
does that
I
not
mean,
exist?
we didn't ask the lawyer to attend to debate his claim. I think we have to
Only if we get
accept
stuck.
that,
If we get stuck, then that's what happens. Hopefully we don't, right?
right. I think we have to assume that the advice of the lawyer is his best professional advice, and we can choose to accept it or not.
So I would say to the extent that, I want to thank Cornell and Matt for bringing this forward. We had a really good discussion at our last council meeting that I thought, and, we agreed that take more time. I had an amendment on the table. We agreed to withdraw the amendment after our discussion with the idea that we consult with, through Cornell, work with Matt, Terezevich, is that how you pronounce? Terezevich, yep. Matt to, think through the ordinance, and he provided us with some language. And my understanding from our agreement on January 8th was that we would come to the meeting today, have a conversation, call a public hearing for the February council meeting, leading to a vote at our March council. And as I understand it, we can amend, we can discuss, we can learn, we can improve. Frankly, we shouldn't necessarily, we have to we have to notice a public hearing with language. Is that right? That's how we do it. And then the public will come and comment on the language. We'll have the public hearing and then grandest and greatest traditions of, transparency and inclusion. And then the council can learn from that and then amend right up until the point where we adopt the thing, if we choose to, based on what we hear at the council, at the hearing, any more guidance or questions people have. So I'm hopeful we could continue to adhere to the spirit of the agreement we had in January, and that's we move this forward. Discussion today, something that we can't, with the agreement that the town will notice a public hearing for our February meeting and then a vote at that March meeting.
Sounds
So I appreciated some of Matt's edits here. I think they actually helped a lot of this flow better. And also, I think made our intentions and sort of how this would be laid out clear. And I think it fits sort of the spirit of what you're looking for. I don't know what other people felt, but I thought that this was an improvement on what was already, language I appreciated.
A damn fine idea to begin with, but then we may not all agree on that, but I didn't invoice anybody for that first round of language, so.
I'll just say I appreciated the Matt's contributions here. Did you want to bring up your additional?
Well, no, I mean, I appreciate his edits. I still, do. I'm still wishing we would keep this in the internal controls, which was his first, which is his advice to us. And yeah, I've just asked for us, do we want to talk about, you had some, I was just trying to find your edits, but it didn't seem to be.
You can do yours first, Leo. Was yours even part of number one? Anyway,
Yeah.
I didn't touch number one.
Okay, yeah, so I think mine was that I think something that needs to be added. I think, I mean, this is stemming from a recent event, obviously, so kind of in line with that, I think we should have some language in here that, ensures that if there's any conflict of interest that any council member would have, that they would recuse themselves from this, which is, you know, the whole idea is that this is gonna come before us, this is kind of coming before town council to vote on. I think if there's a conflict of interest, we should have, someone should recuse themselves, and there should be some language stated. Maybe that's kind of an underlying thing everywhere in what we do when we make decisions. But I think it's specifically relevant on something like this, because I think, you know, it can become personal, and it shouldn't in this setting, and I think I don't know what his thoughts are about that.
I mean, I hear what you're saying, making those things explicit. I do think that it is already sort of legally binding on some level that if somebody feels that they're not able to act impartially or you know, involve themselves impartially, that they're, I think, required to recuse themselves. But I don't know, I'm open to having more specific language also included here. That may be redundant with state.
Yeah,
There is state statute regarding what constitutes conflict of interest in the case of municipal officials. And I think, and I have sort of been familiar with that and thoughtful about that for a long time in discerning whether I had a conflict of interest in the past. So a conflict of interest tends to be defined in existing law as either a monetary interest or like if you're married to someone or family relationships. And I think that there would be real drawbacks in a small town to defining conflict of interest more broadly than that. I see the utility of it and I see the appeal of it. And also, in a small town, most people know other people to varying degrees. And so I'm not sure if anything more than is currently articulated in state statute, which includes both, there's some discretion on the part of the municipal official about, in various circumstances, whether to recuse or to simply disclose conflicts of interests. Anyway, there is existing law about this, I guess is my point.
and you said marriage is the threshold?
And monetary interest. There are a lot of pretty clear laws about various flavors of monetary interest.
Wasn't it family relationships, not just marriage, like children, spouses, like?
Yes.
Didn't you say family?
Yeah.
There is some more general language about bias in general, which is a little bit murky to me, because it's not clear whether that bias only applies in the case of some kind of kin relationship or whether that bias is more broadly, you know, applicable. So I'm not saying that we should accept or not accept this language. I think the advice that we get from the state isn't 100% clear all the time. So, you know, it really does, it is incumbent upon any council as a body to set their own standard. So we could accept the state language, that could be the standard that we accept, but maybe, you know, we're not required to.
Is there anything in I checked quickly with the search term, is there anything in our code or ordinances about I saw some conflict stuff.
Yeah, I've also gone down that rabbit hole before. Again, this came up as a question that I had within myself, so I did just a little refresh today, but had done quite a bit of reading about it in the past. And I don't recall seeing anything in our ORDI code that was really pertinent to this matter. There was some, and just today I did a word search for conflict of interest, and all that I found was pertaining to staff conduct. But I could have missed something. It was today a pretty quick search, so I'd welcome anyone double checking me on that.
So it seems to me that we've sort of got two different questions here. That I mean, one is considering sort of what you're raising as sort of an additional point here about conflicts of interest. That whether we accept it or not, it's sort of an addition to sort of the main bulk that we were initially coming to discuss. And I think we can talk about both. I was just wondering, maybe if we deal with one at a time, that might help the discussion go a little bit more clearly. Even though I was the one who asked you to raise what you did.
I thought you made a suggestion to amend number one, and
Okay,
so I thought we were just looking at item number one right now. I don't
understood.
have any problems with item number one as written and,
As amended or as written?
well, originally as written, and as far as the amendment, Leo, what I guess what I would be comfortable with was something that just reiterated what already exists in state statute at this point about as per state statute, counselors with a conflict of interest would be required to recuse themselves, or whatever the term is in state statute. And just to leave it at that, so that state statute is carrying the day at this point. Because I guess I feel like delving into how we want to fix it or grow that feels like a bigger conversation than I feel like I can comfortably do before February, and I guess we could always amend the ordinance later if we felt the need, but that's where I'm personally at. I'd be comfortable with some language that just said, as per state statute, counselors with a conflict of interest would be required to recuse themselves, something to that
I
matter.
think
And I'll pass them.
that captures, I think, obviously, I just threw something out there, but that does capture what I'm just reiterating it here.
And we're all working off the amendment that Matt Cornell sent us from Matt. Okay, without any edits, that's the, and it's the one that's
It's on the agenda.
linked in the agenda.
Yes,
Okay,
exactly.
so, okay.
Yeah.
So reiterate it.
I'm fine with it if it makes it a better ordinance. But I mean, I like to think of these things of, first and foremost, is what makes a better ordinance. Two, what leads to compromise, and in terms of, support for the final ordinance, and I don't know that this is enough to get you over the line and it
I
may
don't
not be.
know.
Yeah, but that being said, if it is kind of more so the former than the latter, right? So I mean, if people agree that it makes for a better ordinance, I'm certainly fine with it. I'd love it if it was what got more votes for the final ordinance. I'd love it even more. So, but I know we can't hold people to that.
To that point, I guess, is everyone else, has the ship sailed on putting this in the internal controls manual? Is everyone opposed to that at this point, rather than doing an ordinance?
I can see why I am opposed to it. I am on board, Dan has said this and I'm gonna reiterate it. And part of the reason we want to put it out there is that people can find it, can see it, and they know what we're obligated to do in this particular situation. Where we're managing somebody, where the town hall knows about it and now. Why is this, complete black hole? Obviously, we can't tell people what's going on, exactly what we consider. Here we are, we voted on this, it's done, we're moving on. I don't know.
Yeah,
What do you say about that?
I think that's really where I come at it at this point, and I don't want to prejudice the public hearing we're gonna have in February. So gotta be careful. I mean, people would come forward, and if there was a strong opposite,
Yeah.
I'd be surprised. But if there were, I would have to take that into account. But I'm inclined to, I want to see it in ordinance because I think it's communicates where we stand, what we value, reflects the values of our community, and my belief, and that's why I want to see it in ordinance as opposed to an internal control manual memo.
You nod at me or Leo nods at me. I don't know who's in charge of this part of the meeting. I'm waiting for the appropriate nod. Okay, there you go. I was just-
Graciously, yeah.
Sorry, I was also thinking, I had said before that I like the fact that when it's an ordinance, it's searchable and people can find it, but I've also realized since then, the other thing I like is that we have a process we have to go through as a council to change an ordinance. So when we do it, there's discussions about that and things that happen. And so if we were to change it in the future, we'd have to go through that process again and people would have a chance for input. Whereas for our internal procedures manuals, there's less of those layers of process. And I like the idea that this is an important enough thing that when we change it, there's layers of process that the community gets to hear and has a chance to participate in. So that's all I have.
I guess, I think I agree with what's been said so far. I recognize, as you brought up, the lawyer, Nat, recommended that we put it in internal controls, but I think it's important to remember a couple things. One, he recommended it, although we are not doing anything that violates the law in any way, putting this in ordinance. The things that he raised as concerns, directing us in that way. Well, from what I recall, are twofold, mainly. One was that it's kind of an odd place for us to place it in the ordinance, just in purchasing, and I can see that. But I don't think that that's an inherent problem for sort of the legitimacy of what we're putting in here, and if there's a better spot to put it, I think that. Oh, he has moved the
Yeah,
spot.
move the spot, it's no longer there.
Okay, well then, great. Never mind that. Well, so point one taken care of. The second seemed to be something that I'm still struggling to really grasp. Maybe in its fullness, but that it would in some way make it more awkward in terms of whose responsibility it is to deal with these matters regarding manager versus council and how the council is managing the manager and whether or not we're sort of stepping into that role. And I guess maybe there's a third point, which is that it could bring us into discussing personnel matters. Well, I guess that's sort of wrapped up in the second point that aren't in our purview. However, I mean, this seems to me to be mainly around the management of the manager themselves. And I think the way this language has been developed, I just don't see it actually resulting in those problems that have been raised. So I'm not sort of seeing maybe what the issue is that remains for why we shouldn't put it in the ordinance. Yeah.
I don't love putting it in the ordinance language. I much prefer seeing it in the internal controls manual, and it's not for any reason to obscure a process, but I think when you cement a process in an ordinance, you are prescribing a path that must be followed without modification. And I think the relationships between an institution and its employees are really fluid, and that they're stretched in all kinds of ways. And we have seen over time that job descriptions grow and change in reality when they don't change on paper. And so to think that we will always have the same relationship with a manager should an issue arise. Like, okay, so first let me say, should an issue arise with the manager, the town council should be swift to act. But we cannot predict what any of those future issues may be. And I think putting it in an ordinance prescribes our flexibility. So that's just where I fall out.
I guess, yeah, well, I guess it just,
Maybe, Sonia, do you have?
Just briefly, I'm supportive of putting it in ordinance.
I guess I'm curious about sort of, it's hard to predict what kinds of flexibility we might want, and maybe that's part of why sort of you're speaking at that sort of level of generality. Which I think I can understand and respect. I guess I still see this as having a lot of room within it. The language that I'm looking at here, in the event of any written complaint against the town manager alleging discrimination or harassment, chair of the council acting on behalf of consultation with the council, so, and that could take a variety of forms, I think, will consult with the town attorney to identify an impartial attorney to conduct an investigation. The impartial attorney will conduct the investigation and inform both the council chair and the town attorney of their findings. The chair of the
You're
council.
jumping to, I'm sorry, you're jumping to Sarah's.
Sorry? Sorry, that's just, sorry, I'm looking at what you and the lawyer had been discussing here, maybe,
Yeah. That's
okay.
that's what came in.
Well, I'm in favor of what you've brought up, Sarah.
Oh, go ahead,
I-
jump the gun.
I was reading this so thoroughly, and I guess I just didn't know whose was what. But, all right, well, my opinions might change drastically looking at what is not including Sarah's comments.
And we could, so in terms of number one though, so we agreed that we'll take Leo's piece.
I'm in favor of that.
Leo, can you, and when we talk about this, Cornell, I'm sorry, so we're wordsmithing in public meeting,
Well-
proposal.
Can I just say that probably, I would like to have the attorney kind of wordsmith this. I mean, but it is probably pretty straightforward language that it is in accordance
Okay.
to.
But
that
then,
kind
so
of-
essentially the sense of this committee would be, what we determined today would be wordsmith one last time for an ordinance. Yeah, but maybe whatever we end up
wait till we get there, because I don't know.
Well,
Yeah.
like the comment you mentioned, refer to state statute. I'm sure he'd say MRS, whatever the title.
Yeah.
And section is. I don't know what that is off the top.
Okay.
It gets all with it, that's all.
Okay.
We agree that
Yeah.
that works for that.
Can we go on to number 2 before we answer that general question?
Sure, but I guess it's
Where we end up on some things.
to finish number 1, are we okay with both? And I am, but it's both a complaint of discrimination of harassment brought against the town and monetary compensation. That makes sense to me, so and the rationale made sense to me, so I assume. Sure.
Rob, I wanted to just say in response to what you were saying overall, not getting into specific numbers. I felt like the attorney did a really good job in the language he gave back to us, addressing those points and being sure that we were not getting into things we should not be getting into as a council. And I want to state out loud that it's really important to me that we don't do that we respect what that manager relationship is, and that we are not getting into anything that is hard. And I really appreciated that the lawyer brought us in back that we said we take. So I want to be sure personally that we keep doing that, and my rewrites were not intended to change that. So anywhere where there's been comments that they might have actually came with a different idea that, you know, respected that even more with his details back. So I have that, and I'll pass it out when we get to point 3. But my goal would be that we really take his advice on that, and we're really careful about that, because it's super important. That's how our town government is built. It's the center of it, and I don't think anyone on council or in town would ever want to go off that. Number 2.
I'm great with that, yeah.
So can I say something about why I made some changes to number 2? And I think some of this might be a question for staff who are here, no, not an attorney question. Is that okay with people, or do we want to read number 2 first?
Let's read it.
Yeah.
You can,
The original version?
except you, I thought you were.
I was
Okay,
gonna-
yeah, it makes sense to me.
Which one do you want to start with? I just was gonna say something about what I was trying to accomplish by the changes I made first, to see if anyone actually thinks those are important, and part of it's a question for staff. That,
Sounds great. I'm
Okay.
sorry, I read it. I'm just trying to catch up. Pull yours up. To read
I
what it
just
was
ask my
and what
question
you want
first?
to change, yeah.
my basic question to staff is just, my first thing on here was that as the lawyer presented it to us, it begins with prior to initiating any formal investigation into complaint alleging discrimination or harassment by the town of Orono, its employees, or municipal officers. The town manager. Shall.
Yep.
Right, and this is where I'm not clear where it jumps on the original, someone.
Yeah.
Manager shall what?
Notified, your,
Not mine, the original.
the original is,
Schedule an executive session to be held
Yeah.
at the next
Scheduled
regular meeting.
executive session to be held. So my concern about that is the prior language. My understanding from discussions with Sophie when she was here is that there's a time sensitivity to initiating these kinds of investigations. And as the lawyer wrote this, it says that the town manager can't initiate one without first talking to the council about it in an executive meeting, which could take a month to get scheduled. I mean, if you hit the right date right after we have one, it's 30 more days. And I wasn't clear if the lawyer had already talked to staff about that, and Matt had talked to staff, and staff were like, no problem, we can always wait 30 days or more to initiate one of these investigations or not. Part of my rewrite was to try to make a way for the town manager to have more flexibility and be able to initiate it when they felt necessary, and not have to wait potentially 30 days to even start an investigation that they might think was important to start. So I guess, is there input from staff on that? Is that waiting a full 30 days not a problem? It worried me that something that was that serious might need to get investigated, or the town manager might need the flexibility to start it sooner than 30 days.
I did not have a discussion with Matt about 30 days. But I had talked to him about is that changed from the original language to initiating a formal investigation, because oftentimes there is a complaint and it's looked into, and addressed, and perhaps the employee that was charged with harassing didn't realize that they were being harassing at the time, apologize, will not do it again. And it stops, and it's not harassment. So initiating a whole notifying the council, going to executive session when the issue has been resolved. That's why it goes to formal investigation.
I really appreciated that part. That seemed like a crucial change to me.
But I did not talk about a 30-day. I'd have to talk to Madam.
I wondered if
specifically.
that had happened inadvertently in the writing and, I asked that, it didn't get answered in the emails that have gone back and forth with the attorney, and so. I mean, my suggestion would be that I don't think the council needs to be notified prior. I feel like it's the town manager's purview to start an investigation when they feel like one needs to be started. And I would just like council to be notified within a reasonable time frame when a formal investigation has been launched, that one has been launched. I don't feel like I and council want to be notified prior to it being launched. I feel like that's a personnel matter. It's the town manager's purview, and I don't need the prior there. So that's my first comment, question the rest of council. Does anyone else need that prior? Because I don't, and I feel like it's constraining our town manager in a way that I don't want to.
I maybe come at it differently. From the way that Cornell put it, it sounds like there's a lot of learning that can go on. When a couple people can get together and talk about a behavior and address it without thinking. So I would not want to constrain that kind of behavior. And as I read prior to, that would mean a town manager before going through the process of doing, putting someone on notice, they're being investigated, and that feels to me like that's where I would want to be informed. I mean, when something gets to that level, when the town manager and the parties involved are trying to learn from each other and be better to each other, I worry that if we create this, the term formal, I guess, is kind of I worry that we leave. What does formal mean? How do you define formal? Is it? So I worry about that.
Yeah, that's my bigger question there as well. I think prior to or upon, it's kind of 6 of one, half dozen of another, but I don't know what formal investigation is. Does that mean if the manager receives a complaint, I mean, she's formally gonna, he or she is gonna reach out to parties involved? Isn't that formal?
I would assume that staff would make a decision on what's a formal investigation. I think there are precedents around that. I mean, I don't know, you can speak, but I think there is a precedent in staff about what.
It seems to me that it would be
investigation is.
beyond
Fair.
an initial meeting to discuss the issue. That if it isn't resolved, the initial meeting that was a misunderstanding or something like that, and it's taking the next step, then I would say that would be.
I mean, it seems subjective to me, and if a manager says, okay, there's an issue here, whether they go talk to not the victim, I guess, but the person making the complaint, the person that's against, that's a formal action, I feel.
I didn't put that language, it's the lawyer's language.
I kind of trust that if that word was added in to make the distinction by the lawyer. I mean, I'm not familiar with how those things are defined, but I'd be interested to see sort of how it is and how maybe we might resolve that ambiguity. But as far as changing it to upon, per Sarah's suggestion, I'm fine with that for the reasons you stated.
So again, I think if this is interpreted by the manager that they cannot act on something until it comes to council, I think that's A, it's a problem, B, it's us getting involved in personnel issues, and that's
That's why I would rather have it say after they've done it, they notify us that it's happening, not that we notify ahead of time based on our control. Or they do it that. manager-council relationship, which is why I would rather have it say upon doing it, they get this many hours to just let us know that they're doing it.
And I
Or
think it's a
this
simple
week,
change.
you know, this next meeting, they let us know that it's happening.
Yeah.
With only, as Matt has written, whatever details they can disclose to council to the extent permitted by law and nothing else.
Yeah.
So I think that's fine in that.
What would we as counselors do with the 72 hours? And if we find out about it within 30, it's first, I think there's some incumbent, there'll be a responsibility for us to, with the town managers, the town manager supervisor to, you know, outline our expectations in this regard. But I guess I don't know what I would do with, once I know about it. I mean,
For me, honestly, the more important part is the second part, which makes it clear that it'll happen at the next council meeting. We don't have to wait for like. They can change a committee meeting to a special council meeting and have an executive session and give us an update, which means you get the update in a timely fashion. Right, within a week of the investigation being launched.
Yeah.
Whereas otherwise, you could be waiting a full month till the next official council meeting, and that to me feels like a long time potentially.
Mhm.
Just because, I mean, I don't know, people, this is where you all should chime in. I just thought that's a long time to wait in a small town where rumors start to fly and everybody starts, whatever. It's just better as a counselor to know there's one of these going on, if you don't talk about it. And here's the deal. And part of what that executive session I've been told was for by management and Matt is to make sure council knows, like, here's what you don't talk about. Here's what you don't say. Here's how you behave, because there's parameters. So I'd rather not wait a month for that meeting. Once a formal investigation's been launched, I'd rather that as a council, we get it at our next meeting, whatever that is, whether it's a week or 2 or 3, whenever it is. I put the 72 hours in because, again, my experience here is that things fly around fast in town, and I'd rather just get an email saying, there is an investigation, you'll hear more about it at the next meeting, period. Nothing more, like one exists, but that's all I wanted, and everyone else should speak, because y'all been through this much longer than me.
I really appreciate what Sarah's saying, that council needs to be informed in a real timely manner. I balk at if it's an ordinance that we put 72 hours by email, because, 10 years from now, we might not be using email anymore. You're right. I mean, who knows, right? So maybe the number of hours and the method of transmitting the information has to change. The other thing is I don't want to put in there at the next scheduled Monday night meeting, because we have the power to change our meeting dates.
So just at
So-
the next scheduled council meeting.
At the next
converting
scheduled
a
council-
committee meeting.
Yeah,
special council
something-
Meeting if necessary.
Yeah,
That work.
yeah.
What
Yeah.
Jeff is saying makes a lot of sense to me. I like those edits.
What'd you say, Sonia?
I really appreciated the edits that Jeff just made. I think that what he just said makes a lot of sense to me.
For me, that'd be fine. I didn't need the 72-hour thing, and I'd be fine with just saying at the next, in an executive session at the next scheduled council meeting, converting a council committee meeting to a special council meeting if necessary. Does that work for people?
it works for me.
I am still hung up on understanding what formal investigation means, just thinking of the probably more scenarios than we would ever know. Someone maybe has come with an harassment issue and manager or whoever the direct manager is, has looked at, has met with people and investigated, resolved it. Are we saying that we need to hear about that? Or, so I think that's still kind of a hang up point for me, like what, I don't want to tie our staff's hands from being able to do what they need to do, and I don't know that we're accomplishing.
I guess I have confidence that Cornell and Matt talked about that and together felt like formal investigation was what the descriptor needed to be. Cornell, do you feel like that's accurate or not?
Well, we talked about how, what I said, that it's more involved than just a meeting with an employee who's been charged with harassment. I can ask him about if there's more detailed language that would flush out what formal investigation would entail. Now, the only change you just made is you removed regular, is that right?
We got rid of prior to and turned it into upon. And we said town manager shall schedule session at the next scheduled Monday night meeting. Parentheses.
Next
Sorry,
schedule.
not Monday, at the next scheduled council meeting.
You just took out regular. Took out regularly.
Yeah. Next scheduled council meeting, comma, parentheses. Converting a council committee meeting to a special council meeting if necessary. End parentheses. During which executive session, the town manager will advise the full council of the matter to the extent permitted by law. You want me to send it right now in an email?
Yeah, but you meet now every Monday, but you never used to meet.
We have no meeting going on.
Because, yeah, the committee meetings have always been in everyone.
Is,
So,
is there language that can get to what you want to do without like the parentheses and thing? Are we,
No,
Yeah. are we gonna get rid of the email piece altogether?
that part's
Yes.
gone.
And then we're gonna keep the written complaint alleging discrimination or harassment?
I wanted to ask about that.
Okay,
That's my other thing on here that I did care about. Again, I don't wanna, as a counselor, I wanna know anytime the town manager has decided to launch a formal investigation into discrimination or harassment. And I don't care how our town manager made that decision. I believe that's their purview and their job to decide when a formal investigation is needed. And it's my understanding that in the past, we launched one where there was no written complaint that was ever alleged. It was a verbal complaint alleged. And our town manager went through a process and decided it was a serious enough verbal complaint that a formal investigation was needed. So I just think the word written should be taken out there. I don't see what it adds because we would never be notified unless a formal investigation has been launched and the town manager has total jurisdiction to decide when to launch that. I'd like to take out the word written because it seems
So-
to me we have an example where we wouldn't.
I think one like piece of this is that in the past, this law didn't exist, and in the existence of a law that clarifies some of these, if it makes it easier for a person who maybe is in a situation where they want to allege discrimination and harassment, if there's a law they can look to, then they know that a written complaint is part of the process of initiating the thing. And so, I think because like a thing happened a way in the past doesn't necessarily mean that written process isn't the best way to go about having a process happen in the future. Like we're clarifying a process through which this may be easier for future people who, if they have an unfortunate experience, to like know what to do.
What would happen if someone didn't though? If someone just made a verbal allegation and it was serious enough that our town manager wanted to launch a formal investigation? I just want to make space so that my goal sort of is not, I just want to know when there's a formal investigation
Yeah,
going on.
it's a good point.
Manager's
Yep.
business to me.
what do you think constitutes formal?
Again, I think that's
So,
about the staff.
Formal investigation, there is, if you do a quick Google search, there are, there's not like a set process, but there are lots of templates for processes of what constitutes formal investigations into workplace discrimination issues. It's sort of a thing that also has some legal definition around it, I think. So I think that, and that was the lawyer's original language that was proposed. So I think it's interpretable by law what that would mean.
Oh, did you, I didn't know if you had just Googled it or something, because I'm just curious
I
if that
did
initial,
just Google it.
does that initial meeting constitute a formal investigation?
No,
I mean,
a formal investigation is something that includes a number of steps and evidence gathering. Those are some of the characteristics of any kind of formal investigation.
yeah, and I think that seems like a low bar to me.
Formal
that-
investigation.
Yeah, and gathering information. So we don't want our town manager gathering information on something until it's announced to us.
I don't believe that. I think they should do what they want and they should just notify us when they have done it. I don't think it's anything that we have to know ahead of time. And I also just would bump it back to Cornell and Matt. they're not comfortable with the formal investigation language, then I'd want to hear back. But since it came from Maren Cornell, I'm comfortable with it until they tell us it's not what they need.
I think it should be in writing.
What's that?
It should be in writing.
Okay, so written stays. then.
I think so.
Great, and I'm okay with that.
That also helps bring it into compliance with practices for how formal investigations are often carried out. So I'm looking at sort of like various frameworks that universities and other places have, and a written complaint is often the trigger for these kinds of processes.
Okay, so written stays, everyone feel good?
So I think we should, I know, I think we should just keep in mind that our attorney didn't want this here to begin with, so we kind of forced his hand and made him write something. So I'd rather not assume that by saying formal, he really meant formal and I mean, we have no definition.
So can we double check on that, Leo, before the next meeting? Have Chad double check
Should.
on that, Matt? Formal investigation, if that's language he feels is comfortable with? Back to you, Leo?
He gave us a language at our request. We tasked the attorney. Yeah.
Let's double check.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think it's worth asking.
okay, Ruth?
Yep.
Was that number two? We actually.
I don't know if we're done. Are we just making edits to what was in with the agenda, or are we making edits to we're taking out the email piece, right?
So if you look at mine, and we would currently have on initiating any formal investigation
Yeah.
into a written complaint, written both by him, alleging discrimination or harassment by the town of Orono, its employees or municipal officers, the town manager shall. And here we delete a whole bunch of stuff from mine, and we jump to schedule. The end of the fourth one.
Okay.
The town manager shall schedule an executive session at the next scheduled council meeting. The moment it says parentheses, converting a council committee meeting to a special council meeting if necessary.
What if we just said, instead of, what if we said held at the next scheduled meeting?
Council meeting, because it doesn't matter whether you convert a committee meeting to a special council meeting. It's still the next scheduled council meeting. You don't have to get into committee.
It does matter because if you see the next scheduled council meeting, people assume that means the second Monday of the month. And I'm saying not that we make one sooner. If we already have another time where we're meeting in committee, we say that's going to become a special meeting.
Could you say
It's a
meeting or
session at the
committee
end.
meeting? You could say the next meeting of the town council.
Yeah, I think that does it. If the town council thing, meeting of the town councils, anytime that we all get together.
So also, but they're gonna have to convert that meeting to a special council meeting.
They'll know how to do it.
Executive Session on it, or they can't do it.
Yeah, they'll know how to do it. I mean, as long as it's
I
not
think
a,
it's confusing. I personally put the parentheses because I'd be confused if I read it otherwise, but
I don't mind a little, if it is already easy to understand, I don't mind a little redundancy there if it just helps make it clear for anybody who might still feel similarly to Sarah about it. Converting a council committee meeting to a special council meeting if necessary. I think just helps it make clear to everybody, because I know for a lot of people engaging with the council for the first time, they might not know the difference between them. Although I think what Cornell raises is right.
I do,
Alright.
I feel pretty strongly that the best law is the most parsimonious law, and that things that like account for how convoluted things are in a system that may be changed could become confusing later on. Like maybe we'll do away with the structure by which we meet in committee the way we do and go to a system where we just meet every week as council. We could do that. And then in the event that we do that, we have this other law that is then confusing because it's like referring back to an artifact of how things were that was kind of confusing. So I kind of like just the simplicity of the next meeting of the town council. Or because it is most parsimonious.
and we're okay if that gets interpreted to mean the next official one 30 days down the line.
I think we'd have a problem with our town manager if they did that. I think we'd make them aware of it.
I prefer something clearer, but I'm okay with giving up on it if it matters to everybody else the other way.
Yep.
What do everybody else think, Matt? Anyone else?
I think, I agree with us, with Sonia's rationale that things could change, so if we try to make it as broad as the next council meeting.
Next scheduled meeting of the town
Next
council,
Next scheduled meeting of
not including potlucks.
the next meeting of the town council.
Yeah.
There's nothing else we can clarify that makes it clear that it doesn't have to be an official monthly meeting.
Yeah.
right?
And I also- Yeah, I also think that given that this is point two, and this is about management of employees under the town manager, I think it's also. I don't think I don't really foresee it being important that it's that timely, it's the very next meeting for us to be informed. I think it's good that they inform us. And the next possible opportunity, if there is an alternative like interpretation, the more important part in this, to me honestly, is point three about our management of the manager.
Actually, I agree with what you're saying, because I just realized that we took prior to out, so 30 days doesn't matter that much anymore, because my big concern was the manager having to wait around 30 days to take action, and we took that out, so I can look at that.
Okay.
Everybody okay?
It's good. I saw a thumbs up there on the screen.
Okay, good. All right, so the language was at the next scheduled meeting of the town council, during which executive session, the town manager will advise the full council of the matter to the extent permitted by law.
That's
Can
right.
we get all the way to the end?
Sausage is almost made.
Ah,
Wait a minute, so you just, no, you threw your stuff,
No,
you
today,
threw
number two.
your edit in the stuff that was in the agenda thing.
So you were gonna say the town manager shall also schedule,
Yeah, it reads right now, we have it on this side of the table, it reads, the next scheduled meeting of the town council in order to advise the full council of the matter to the extent permitted by law.
perfect.
Okay.
Take out all the other stuff. Good,
Okay, good.
thank you,
You okay? Yep. Good,
thank you for now.
thank you. Number three,
Number 3. Oop.
letter 3.
This is the part where the town attorney has advice that I'm not supposed to say anything about, so I'm not really sure how we address that. Everyone read the town attorney's advice on number 3, and I wrote a different idea based on his feedback and advice, but we're not supposed to talk about his advice. I don't know what you want to do there.
Yeah, I think we can't discuss it. I would ask why we feel that the town attorney is not an impartial investigator. The town attorney doesn't work for the town manager. The town attorney works for the town council. We should be hiring somebody that is impartial and gives us the best legal advice. So why would we hire an attorney to go hire an attorney for us?
Well, so in the very last process, that was relevant, this sort of thing, there was an outside attorney hired.
Sure.
And so, I mean,
Because that was the best practice at the time.
yeah, well, so I wonder if, just looking at this again, whether or not it might still be, sort of possible for it to be decided that the current town attorney is the right attorney to handle the matter, whether or not that's still allowable under the language we're looking at.
I guess it didn't occur to me that there would be a scenario where our town attorney would ever be considered the impartial investigator, because they have an ongoing relationship with the town manager the same way we do as a council. I've never heard of a scenario in a school board or a town that's been investigated by a town attorney who's no implication on our attorney. I just literally, I've never, ever heard of one in the state done that before now. I mean, they have a very long-standing ongoing relationship with the manager, just like the council does, sometimes much, much longer.
Usually they hire
I always.
someone outside, but it may not be an attorney.
Right, but that was important. That was language they brought up, that it might not be an attorney, and I wrote a different idea based on fixing that. It doesn't say attorney. And I literally did this just before the meeting because I got the advice to read. I can read it out loud.
Yeah, would you?
I mean, I took the language, and it's only I guess I could say it's just the second sentence that I added in. The first sentence and the third sentence are Matt's language, and the second sentence is mine. So the first sentence is the town attorney, in consultation with the chair of the council, will oversee any investigation resulting from any written complaint against the town manager alleging discrimination or harassment. That's Matt. I added, such an investigation shall be conducted by an independent party jointly chosen by the council chair and the town attorney. And upon conclusion, the written findings from the investigation shall be shared with the full council. That's my sentence. Matt's second sentence is the town attorney shall also provide the full council with legal updates as necessary or upon request. Such updates shall be conducted in executive session pursuant to our MRS, blah, blah. Cornell, did you not get one? Did it not make?
Oh,
your
I'm
mouth?
sorry.
Pass it
Rob and
on.
I was saw this second.
Sorry.
Oh, boy.
Rob and I had three.
Together.
I had three. Oh, I apparently had three.
So
So, Sarah, I think your language encompasses 90% of what would and almost every time would, what would happen. As I think about it in those terms.
I mean, it only
Yeah.
applies if there is an investigation, so
Yep.
even if he decided or somehow that was decided no investigation was needed, which is hard for me to imagine, but I didn't add anything saying one had to happen, just if there is one, be done by an independent party, which is my understanding of what we always do. And
So,
that it would be, the written findings would come back to the full council, that's it, which is again, I think what we always do. So I tried to put into writing what we do.
No, I'm not sure. Oh, Sonia has her hand up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I think an independent, I would think changing independent attorney to independent party and leave that a little bit broader. I don't know that an attorney is always I think in a lot of cases, they might be a great person to oversee this. And also it's possible that there would be other qualified parties who could be entertained to oversee something of this nature.
I did, Sonia, that's the language I just passed out, and I can put it into an email to you.
Yeah, can we see this?
I'll give it, stick it into an email to you, but I did make that change. Based
Oh,
on the lawyer.
did you already make that change? I was looking maybe at a version from earlier.
don't have the piece
Yeah,
of paper we have.
it's just passed
Okay.
out.
Great. Well, I'm glad that we already thought through that together. Perfect.
Well, and again, I feel like we're kind of prescribing something that if that's best practice, I mean, we hire the attorney. I mean, presumably they're gonna do, I guess, the right thing, and now it feels like we are prescribing what they do. So it does feel a little redundant to me. It seems like it's covered by saying the chair and the attorney will oversee what needs to happen. Then we go on to tell them, how it has to happen, which
Well,
it seems redundant.
I didn't say it had to, Leo, I just said if there is an investigation, such an investigation, if there is one, it doesn't say there has to be one. Right?
Right, but it shall be conducted by a neutral party, like, again,
I guess-
we are prescribing what the attorney what the attorney has to do in the event there's an investigation.
Okay, yeah, I guess that's true. I thought of it more as putting into writing what we already do and what our attorney has done in every case so that the public sees it. It's an ordinance. I mean, I want it seen so that the public knows this is how we proceed and this is what you should be expecting us to do.
So, and I guess there probably could be a situation where it doesn't require that to happen, but just, and that's why I think you leave that out to leave it at their discretion.
I guess I like sort of the order of events here as laid out, because it makes clear sort of what the process is. From sort of start of investigation through, with plenty of wiggle room for sort of how this operates. But saying sort of what it is that is the procedure for choosing an independent party, and then upon conclusion, the findings shared with the council, and then it just makes clear sort of the step from the first sentence that Matt gave us to the second sentence. I think your sentence at least lays out sort of how we get step by step to the point where the town attorney shall also provide the full council with legal updates as necessary or upon request. Yeah, I just think it helps make the whole thing a lot clearer for anybody who is interacting with this for the first time. Even if it is, again, perhaps a little redundant.
Prescriptive.
Well, yeah, but I think this is something worth prescribing. I mean, in my opinion, because I don't think it's overly binding or ties hands, other than, I mean, it says there will be an independent party chosen by chair and town attorney. The only thing, and if that's what we're already doing, the only sort of, it seems to me, specific prescription here, that may be potentially new, is upon conclusion, the findings should be shared with the full council. And I don't, I guess I wonder if you find that particular prescription to be controversial or.
That's the part I like. I like that part a lot. And I think about it in terms of, even if it was something that was perfunctory or something that was easily resolved. Someone is gonna have to take, someone who's also an expert is gonna have to take the time to summarize what happened and give all 7 counselors a copy of it, right? It becomes part of the, you know, the personnel, whatever it becomes. But I think, I do like, Sarah, you sold me on the part that you write down your rules in writing so people know what's gonna happen. And then, right, this council, future councils are held to it, and I like the idea of, you know, someone summarizing it for the council in terms of what the council chair did, even if it's just that, so summarizing what the chair and the attorney agreed to and how they dispensed with it, I think is an important thing.
That would be verbal, not obviously, right?
It'd be in writing in an executive session as a personnel matter, I would think. It'd be something that would go in someone's personnel file if someone was exonerated or,
Unfounded complaint doesn't go in someone's personal file.
No.
It just doesn't appear at all.
okay.
Like having this stuff where somebody who is out public, it's like, I heard about something, what are they doing? And now it's, and so I'm not. I think the problem will be, we can't see the future, so all of our ordinances are gonna get changed, some, hopefully it'll be flexible, not to be, stupid. I don't think it is. I think it's something that people can see, say, okay, now let's do the process, and we can say, the process started. So this is where we're at in this process. Because we shouldn't, and we can't tell people the specifics, that's not what I want. This is where we're at. You can look it up on our town ordinance.
Consensus seems to be that we're keeping that in there, I'd say. Is that safe?
Sarah's language here that you
Yeah.
passed up, I like it.
Second version of Sarah's language, not the first one.
Yep,
Because
as-
before the lawyer gave feedback, the
Yep.
second one that I just passed out on paper and just emailed to Sonia. For now, I
Yeah,
can
thank you. Thank you for sharing the new version, Sarah. That, I really like the new version and it clarifies all my questions about it.
And I could send that, I just sent it to Sonia and I could now just forward it to Cornell. So he has that in a written version, Cornell, do you like that? Not on paper, but in an email.
Yes.
You want it digitally, I'm happy to put it in.
Yeah, I'd like to have it, actually, so,
I'll do that right now.
thank you.
Yeah, like I have any additional feedback on this?
Anybody else? Any public comment?
I guess I would say that, you know, I appreciate that this is being kind of laid out in public, but I think for me, the most important thing is that the process is of the highest integrity. So, you know, I appreciate the, you know, the steps that are outlined for the public, but the process itself is really important.
Thank you. Your name? Your name?
My name is Melinda.
Linda. Thank you. Appreciate
Thank you.
your comments. Anybody online?
No hands raised at this time.
So this will be reworked and then come for a hearing in March, February, is that what we're talking about?
Great.
Very good.
Thank you, Leo. Thank you, everyone. Hours getting late, so we'll do a quick town council chair and town manager update. The only thing that I wanted to discuss in the council chair update is the file we had shared with us today about the mini grants. And I was concerned that we would not, that we'd be limited in our discussion of them because we technically don't vote on these, but remember that all we need is a nod of approval or some indication that we're not approving a mini grant. Because we've already voted to disperse the funds, these $10,000 throughout the year. So let me pull up, we had 3 mini grant proposals that were shared with us today. I need to catch up with those. Second.
While you're catching up, can we try to streamline a process maybe where like we get them when they come in or the week they come in or something like that? Is that?
I think that's gonna be handled. I think we'll improve that process as we go through.
So they come to us sooner. And
Yeah.
also, I was wondering to ask staff that the Excel spreadsheet thing is, I know it's one way to look at it, but is it possible to just see the actual application? I find it much harder to open separate boxes, and it's a one-page application anyway, so just scanning the
Scan it.
one-page application so we could read it straight through, to me would be helpful.
Are these to be for committee meetings?
We're supposed to,
So, yeah, so our process when we first laid out the guidelines for doing this was that, and this, I should have just discussed this with you prior to this, but I was rereading our policy guide to the use of the community building mini grants today. Was that the disbursement of the $10,000 has already been approved, so the process of dispersing individual mini grants doesn't rely on a formal vote. So our prospective process for this was at our next meeting, whatever time that next meeting was, we wouldn't call an emergency meeting for any of these. But the next time the council convened, we would look at whatever mini grant had come in and weigh it on its merits, given the policy guidelines that we've laid out. So because at least one of these grants is time sensitive, I thought we could hopefully briefly go through the 3 of them and either approve or not approve each of those 3.
and we're not,
Just to clarify, that wasn't a reflection on
Yeah,
staff process
at
at all. This is brand new. We're making it up as we go. So that, I think, I just wanted to
Yeah.
clarify that. That was no reflection of anyone not doing what we didn't tell them, basically. I mean,
if I could just add that we did, before Sophie left, we did have discussions with Sophie about it, and what she said was that, you know, staff would take a quick look at it to make sure there was no obvious red flag problem, like the building is not available that day, or this would violate, I don't know, our anti-discrimination policy, whatever, some obvious red flag. And as long as there was no obvious red flag, it would be passed to us at the next meeting. If there was one that staff needed to get back to them and address, it might take a week longer than that. But and Mitch could maybe chime in, but that was my understanding when we spoke with Sophie. And so it seemed like one would come in and we would see it on the next Monday, or maybe at the most, the Monday after that, if staff needed to follow up on something in between. Does that fit your memory, Mitch? Were you there?
It does,
Yeah.
what I was unclear and may have been set up without me about how they were coming in, because I didn't even know this existed. So, I mean, I knew the grants existed, but I didn't know there was a form to
You
get
didn't know
them
where they
in.
were going, did
I
you?
didn't, yeah, so, but I will also say that I don't know that other than sending you what was there, staff has really looked at these. So,
They don't seem to have any specific dates or buildings, right?
well, there are a couple things in there that I would question on whether that's something that you would want to do. First of all, the one about putting paintings on buildings, the town owns no buildings downtown. I mean, that unless you were gonna put something on the side of this. So I don't know where it falls as far as spending money on private property. That's not something that usually the town does.
So Mitch, before we, can we just address each one? in
Yeah,
turn?
go ahead. Yeah, that's fine. I didn't mean to.
So the first one is the one that Mitch was discussing, which I think that is a question, right? Because it relies on a public-private partnership. There's also no specific project date with that one. It exceeds the $1,000 recommended limit.
It doesn't actually, they're not asking for the full amount. The full proposal is 1,200, but they're only requesting 850 from the town.
Okay.
They're saying that they would partner with businesses for the meeting, it says we would provide, with launch, I guess Launchpad would provide the additional money for the email. You're asking $850 from the town, with Launchpad providing that.
With. You have more, I'm interested to hear from Mitch on this too, but, I don't know who the requester is. I didn't have time to go look at what Launchpad, I didn't have time to look at what, I know, and I didn't have time to look at that, so this is definitely one where it's not clear to me. It's obviously happening in our community, which is what we want. I don't know if there is a residence requirement on people requesting these funds or not. Is there none?
So
I mean, if
our
there's
policy
not,
guideline says a single individual organization may submit an application, says this is. There is no residency requirement. The requirement is that the applicant either be, I'm paraphrasing, either be a resident or an institution that has some activity within Oregon.
and this activity ultimately ends up being here, but it feels strange to me not having it. So that's one thing, unless I'm missing something.
It's just the company without a local name, you're saying, of a local person
Yeah.
partnering with them?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this one has the least time constraint, I think, Jeff, you were saying there was no date, but there is a date, they say they typically install in June.
Yes.
And they come down on their own, so to Mitch's question, like, I'm assuming they have a process to reach out to private business owners and say, do you want one? Right?
So I don't know any.
I read on their website.
Yeah,
it sounds
I
like
will
they-
tell you
yeah.
this, I briefly saw them when it got sent through.
Yeah.
And all that came to mind was, the town owns no buildings that I think these would go on. If there was one, that would be different. And therefore that makes that private property, that something would be going on. That was the question that I had, and I'm not telling you prescribing anything. That is one of those things that we typically I don't think we can spend money on.
Do we have a mechanism for communicating back to applicants? Could we say, well, we need some more information on this? Such as the issuing of a timeline, what specific buildings you would like, or what specific partners you hope to work with within Orono. And since our policy guideline is the fees be apolitical and non-activist related, it seems to me like public art can be just for beautification, but public art often has a political or activist component to it. And I would want to make sure that we're partnering with a group that is aware of that.
I think those are great suggestions.
I wrote down, oh my God, what partners they were hoping to work with, how to choose those partners, are be non-activist in nature.
But it cannot be political or
Yeah,
activist,
yeah.
right? So that they would have to be clear that this is, right, potentially beautiful and enriching, but.
And I would assume, I can't remember how we're validating, like, we give you $800 and you spend it on this. I don't know if we've established that process, but this would presumably have to be contingent upon finding
Delivering.
buildings and finding the partnerships and making it happen.
So I think, like, I personally am in favor of just funding this proposal. I'm looking at their website and looking at the really cool art installations that have happened in Bangor from this organization, and they're beautiful. They're just like lovely art. That's an opportunity to partner with local businesses and to build connections. And it looks like this is an established group that knows what they're doing and is doing really cool work. So my hot take is, like, go for it. And also we should connect them with project number 3 that's trying to build more connections around artists, because they seem like really cool people to link up with.
There's a lot of concern with like private.
Looks like a Democrat to me.
Companies and stuff, like. Wonder how limiting that will be, how it's gonna be, like, when, let's say OBC is like. We wanna have a community, bouncy house for the kids in our parking lot, like. And we're gonna get all the kids together and it's gonna be the kids festival, we want to help with the cheap parking lot, we wanna do it, and I would.
I think that would be,
Remiss if it was like, oh, it's a private company, yeah.
I'm not opposed to funding things that involve private companies. I would just want to know, like, before we approve a couple $100. Do you have a business partner that you can work?
I guess I like the idea of if we approve it, and if they don't find a business partner to work with, they don't get the money. Rather than make them find the partner first, because I don't know how that works. That'd be Jeff, but
Yeah, I mean, I'm afraid, we're sort of funding these on first come, first served basis. If we earmark $850 for this group, which may be a great group, I'm not saying that it's not appropriate or anything. Then somebody else comes along later and we've already spent that $850 and then they never find a private partner to work with. Right?
Yeah.
Then somebody else is out.
That's fair. That makes sense. So I think replying and saying, we are excited by this concept. Here are a couple of questions, and we would look to sort of move forward in support of your proposal if you're able to put together these next steps. That sounds fine to me.
Who does the follow? Should we invite them to, Zoom into a meeting with us?
Yeah, so I don't want to put this on staff. This has really been a project of town council. Can you do a draft and share it with me and then
I can
we'll,
draft something and share it with you, Jeff, with that work.
yeah, that'd be great.
And also, I just did want to say, I also think we should be concerned about never put things or paid to put things on private property. I guess this is like temporary art. We're not like investing in somebody's building to improve the structure. It's temporary art that washes away eventually. And I do think that's a real benefit to the community and fun for everyone walking around town. It seems like they have scan codes that you can scan and learn about the artists. And to me, that just sounds like a really good community building event. And I wouldn't be concerned about spending town money on the wall of a piece of private property as a temporary art installation that washes away. We haven't improved their value or done something for one business that we haven't done for another. So I'm comfortable.
And the funds are going to be used in large part, or it doesn't say exactly what the breakup is, but artist stipends is part of what they're asking for funds for. And that's sort of obviously not an investment in any individual building.
Follow.
Yeah. Okay, what about number 2, which is a request to help defray some costs for farmers market so we can continue in the winter time.
I can put my cards on the table here and then let you guys discuss. I personally put money into this because I think it's important and not everybody can put money into this. As we get back to talk about the market here. I think it's an incredible, yes, the farmers there will be benefited from this, but the community I think benefits coming being seeing each other, talking, pointing and everything. We might cards on the table so you guys know that I'm somebody who spends money on this so that they can do this because I think it's important. I think it's a good food source. With that said, I'm totally fine with funding this, but now I'm gonna shut up. So all my cards are on the table.
Thanks, Matt.
Full disclosure.
Thanks, Matt.
I have said, spoken with some counselors, and I've spoken with businesses in town, and I do think, I like the addition of having musicians, and I think that's a reasonable thing to fund, but funding what is basically a cost of doing business, I think is not, I think we need to avoid that. Just in the example would be, we charge all of our businesses a vitulers license and they don't know, they pay $100 a year or whatever to do business here. And that's effectively, well, I mean, that's a cost of doing business. And I think if we fund something like this, then I think that was, I don't know why it wouldn't open it up for businesses to come and ask for funding for their vitulers license for the year. That seems like that's that would be a reasonable request, and it's not, I don't think something that's not the intent of this. Now, again, the music, which is like adding to what's already existing, that's the community part, and I understand the farmers market is a community part, but so is going to Pat's, or so is going to Family Dog or Ampersands. Those are community places too. So I think when commerce is, if this is a directly support like commerce, I think it gets away from what the intent of the grants were.
I don't know if this matters, Leo, to your point, but I'm just gonna put it out there in case it does. I think that actually what this money goes to is to pay the school for their space. So
Yeah,
it's not that, I mean, the farmer's market folks are not paying a fee to us as a town to be there. The community or whoever chooses to do it, somebody's paying the school. Because we can use this space to hold a farmer's market.
Right.
And right now it's being paid, I guess, by individual community members who are donating money to do that, not by the vendors themselves, is my understanding. Maybe Matt.
Are they
can
not,
speak
are they
to
not
that.
paying any of it?
I don't believe so.
Beyond.
I have no idea what the arrangement is. I know when they moved in there, they're being charged rent to use the space. The farmer's market. And that has developed into community members paying for it, but it is rent for the farmer's market as an entity to use that space.
Yeah, and I understand it's not rent. I mean, I asked the school board president, it isn't rent so much as it is reimbursement for, if they're not charging them rent, they're charging them the cost for like the janitor who has to open the building and be there during the time and clean up afterwards. Like the cost is very low because they're charging them just cost to keep the building open with nothing additional added.
I think that probably qualifies as well.
Yeah, I'm just saying, it's not like an additional rent added. It's like,
Right.
here's the cost just to be able to have the building open.
And just to respond, that doesn't, that's like exactly what I thought it was for, and again, it's no different, our businesses are paying rent, they're paying fees. It's a cost of doing business, obviously, and they're there to make money, which I'm all for, and I think it's a great, the farmer's market's awesome, but I just think that's a bad precedence to set to get in the business of paying people's rent.
So individuals, like, you take a month, you take a Saturday and like, that's what you do, you pay for it?
So it's a bit more like, you know, to me, I mean, I don't know, but I'm just thinking out loud because I think this is a good point. I'm not even sure exactly where I am, but is that also similar to like when the Caribou Bog people come and say, we'd like some money from council toward the Caribou Bog Center because this is something that other people in town have contributed to privately, and now we're asking council to also step up and make a council contribution. Is this similar to that then, or different?
I think it's different because in the Caribou Bog, I don't think there's any commerce associated.
Okay,
I actually think it's more similar to when we do something like a trunk or treat event downtown, and that ends up being good for the local businesses that are adjacent to that. But the investment is in the like community endeavor that is that spans beyond any in particular business. And the Orono Farmers Market is not a business; it's a community group that brings people together, and very much a collaborative entity between people who are shopping there and vibing there and the people who, yes, do make an incredibly scrappy living trying to subsist off selling vegetables, which I will tell you, nobody is in it for the money. As someone who's done a lot of farm economics. So I'm pretty like firmly in support of this. To me, this feels like it's way more than subsidizing a particular business. It's not a business, it's an organization, and we're supporting like pretty good old-fashioned community fun is my firm hot take.
I mean, is the Orono Farmers Market like its own nonprofit, or is it just a loose agglomeration, or what is it exactly? When you say
I
the
don't
Orono,
actually know if they're official. I think they probably are their own nonprofit. I can double check that.
that would be helpful to know, because that would be pretty different. I don't know.
I don't believe that they're a nonprofit. I think they are a group that has membership to that. But I could be wrong. They could be a nonprofit, but there is a membership for them to belong to the farmer's market in order to be part of the event that they have.
I guess I don't see it being like the trunk or treat. I don't think there's anyone selling goods at the trunk or treat, but I may be off on it. So again, they're here for commerce. They're here, however much money they make, I don't know and don't need to know, but it is commerce.
Sure, but I thought Tony was quite interesting that there are, I mean, businesses that, you know, have commerce downtown. We do try to do things to make their business better. We do have trunk or treater. In the past, we've had Orono days, or we have Arts-a-Palooza, which I've been told has brought like the biggest day of income for businesses in the summer is Arts-a-Palooza Day, right? And we have funded Arts-a-Palooza, which brings people into those businesses. They are open and they are selling their food and their drinks during that time. Council has funded Arts-a-Palooza in the past, in part. So I mean, I guess that would be my question. I'm not sure how it's different than that. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out.
We funded Arts-a-Palooza. It's not like the bands aren't making money. I mean, it's a community event. I get it. the commerce is the difference for me. I guess I don't, maybe you're not seeing that there's commerce and.
So you would say
But-
fund-
But this is like Connie Carter, who's an individual citizen who's putting in this pitch. It's like obviously a grassroots community support of what is, it doesn't seem to be an official nonprofit that I can find. I think it's a community organization.
Yeah, and the farmers are certainly there to sell their goods.
Right.
That's-
I think I see what you're saying, Leo. I mean, as opposed to Artspalooza, where it is like promoting people going to all these places around town or truck or treat, again, like people being in proximity before some other event. This is actually facilitating the sale that's ongoing, or the sales that are ongoing. And I see the distinction you're making. I don't entirely disagree. I don't know exactly where I fall down on this one. But I don't entirely disagree with you.
Kind of agree with everybody, which makes it kind of hard.
And this is the one that needs an answer, so we
Right,
either have to
this is-
decide musicians only or the whole thing or nothing, right, Jeff?
Yeah, for me, I'll just say where I fall out. I think this is pennies given for pounds of return. Because I understand Leo's caution about subsidizing certain businesses and not subsidizing others. I think what is the sort of zeitgeist of the farmer's market is that people come together in a way that they don't come together at a particular grocery store or another kind of venue. And so there is value in the quality of the community that is formed. So for me, where I wouldn't necessarily be comfortable donating municipal funds to a particular business, I am comfortable in this case because I think it's a relatively small investment on a huge quality of return. So that's what I thought.
Nicely put.
Then can we give a consensus that we ought to do it's 500 for 2 Saturdays? Is that? Yeah.
Thumbs up, yes.
No, that's, okay, well, we don't have to take a vote.
And I'm in favor of just the music.
Okay.
We need to decide.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, the
Sounds like
consensus
consensus.
is this. All right, our third and final application is a music program proposed or community arts event. Proposed project seeks to build community in a pride place by creating cohesive community-driven culture for the arts that is inclusive and built on our inherent community diversity. Current suggestions for speakers include, we've all seen it. And so I would have liked some specificity on where and when these events are going to take place.
I just want to say Keith Anderson.
It did say
Yeah.
Keith Anderson,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think under I, Jeff, as opposed to J column,
Okay.
briefly proposed, it said there'd be 90-minute long events, there'd be 3 different events. At each event, an artist would be invited to make a 45-minute presentation about their art and creative process, and after a brief break, the artist will facilitate a collective creative effort. This experience could be the making of an individual work of art, or it could be facilitated small groups or large group efforts, and the experiential components would be up to the artist. So each event will also include a brief discussion about the effort to create public art in Orono, gather input from interested community members. Ultimately, this would hope to create a foundational group to create public mural art, more public mural. I think they're meaning perhaps not the wash away kind that Launchpad was not. And so I think there are 3 events, 90 minutes long each, a presentation first, and then a community art making together part second, and some discussions that build an ongoing group that would continue doing public art things in the future. So I like that part, because one thing we said was hopefully it would be like seed money.
Right.
To get something going that would build and continue ideas into the future. So that's what I think I'm in favor of this, and I did. Later, she gave examples of artists. They were kinds of artists they hope to reach out to, but I think they're waiting to know if they have money before reaching out to the artists. And Megan does have a lot of experience doing community art, this community member. She did it as a job elsewhere in another municipality. So I feel pretty confident that it would be good quality and well.
Does this read that the Keith Anderson house would be in kind as well?
I think it said,
plus the use of Keith Anderson. What, I don't know what the normal rent. What is the normal rent on Keith Anderson?
For a resident?
Yeah.
$30
$30 a what?
an hour. I mean, we would work with people if it's more than that, but that's the regular.
Sounds
But if it was
Perfectly comfortable donating the space. If we think it's community building, then I would want us to donate the space anyway, even if it wasn't part of the mini grant, but. Yeah.
But that would be part of the process. And that's one of the things we talked about was if those things collided, those were ways that we could help facilitate these things happening.
Feels like it fits the spirit of what the mini grants are supposed to do.
I'm actually really excited.
Yeah.
When I heard that, I
All right.
heard that these were here, I was like, wow, people are taking advantage of it and these are such.
Yeah.
good
So-
ideas.
The
Consensus.
thing I like about this proposal is that they're sort of looking ahead toward trying to get people together and build something larger. And I like that that our mini grant could be sort of seed funding for something that might continue as a new group. That to me is pretty exciting.
And I think your idea was good about connecting them with the launch pad as well. So that seems like a good potential for them. So, great.
And also, they weren't even asking for the full amount. They're suggesting that we pay 1,000 and that they get 500 from business sponsorships, which I also think is great for building ongoing viability in the future. I like that part of this proposal.
So sounds like we're pretty much in favor of this one. Yep. All right, so that concludes, everything I had.
How do we, who follows up with these people to make
So-
sure they know?
At first, it was going to be some avenue through the town manager's office.
Yeah.
Because if the town manager could better talk about the specifics of funding mechanisms and
Yeah.
things like that. So if you don't mind, I'll give Cornell a call tomorrow.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
But you still want me to draft an email to
To do
Launchpad.
Launchpad,
And they'll
because I
follow
think
up with
that
the
will,
ones that are approved. Launchpad is approved, awaiting. What are
I think,
Saturday?
yeah, I think it's waiting,
Got it.
pending some more information. We can talk about the
I
language.
will say
Eager.
again, I did not have a chance to look at it, but Rob just had it pulled up and it did look really cool. Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
I've seen it Wednesday, Bangor.
It's pretty cool. Okay.
They didn't do the umbrellas. did they?
Cornell, do we have anything on our manager's report this evening?
Yes, I was asked about if there was an update on the Bangor Gas ADB appeal by the abutters to that project. So I sent a note to Roger, the town attorney. He said, no update. We are still awaiting either a decision or a hearing date on the appellant's motion for a trial of the facts. The entire case is stayed pending a decision on that motion. I'll let you know just as soon as I hear it.
I was just wondering, in the email that you sent, Jeff, to council, it kind of indicated the ways that the community can still engage with council while this is ongoing. You had 3 things that they could do and haven't done. Could we read that out so people in the public have it on the record? Like, these are things you can do while it's ongoing. There's many things that we can't do. We can't comment,
Sure.
we can't respond, but they have things they can do. And I'd love it just read into the record what those things are.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jeff.
So community members can, of course, discuss whatever they. So I just got from the network.
Hey, take your jacket off. We're gonna be here a while.
I'm back on.
I'm not done yet. Yeah.
Oh, no.
But here it is. Okay, these are not ways that are prescribed for this
No. for
case. This is for anybody who wants to bring any issue before town council. People can always do one of 3 things. I want to make sure I get my language correct. Okay, you can request to formally address the town council, and those requests are normally made in writing to the town council chair. They could petition the town council, and anybody or any group in town can bring a petition to any town council meeting. We have a specific time and space set aside in every town council meeting to receive petitions, and or any individual or group can speak to the council during the open public comment session. So those are avenues that people can address the full council anytime they choose. They're also welcome to address communication to individual councilors. However, in this particular case, individual counselors may be prevented from engaging in substantive conversation about this particular issue.
You're saying people can come and comment about a pending litigation?
People can you can come during a public comment session and make a public comment. We will not be able to reply or respond to that comment. And it may not be in their interest to do so. Their legal counsel may tell them not to do it. But I think it's my understanding that we cannot preclude, unless you're specifically talking about issues that are protected under employee privacy and things like that. We can't preclude somebody coming in here and talking about their favorite speed bump or talking about a bigger issue. Now, we may have to say, if comment goes on too long or gets into specific areas that we're not allowed to discuss, that we cannot entertain any more comment. I'm just trying to be as open to this as possible, because in this matter or in other matters, there may be people who are part of the litigant group. There may be people who live in the area who are not part of the litigant group, and we cannot prevent someone from sharing their comment with counsel. If I'm off track
I just not in my past experience of during public comment, you can speak except for things that are in litigation.
okay, so
All the town.
maybe we should talk to Roger. That has never been. I shouldn't say that. In the few years I've been here, that hasn't ever been explicit in our instructions to anybody during public comment. We have restricted public comment when people have tried to make comment about particular employees, employee performance, or or some other protected categories of individuals' employment. That seems clearly restricted. And there may be other restrictions, but in general, an individual can comment, particularly if that individual is not a litigant, but is a resident. That individual could comment. We might not have grounds to prevent that person's comment. But I can be corrected, so.
Okay, well, we'll wait and see if
Yeah.
there's a correction coming. But for now, that's been read. And can I just ask for clarification for me? Is it different if someone who lives in that neighborhood or is involved in that suit wanted to come and say to council, look, we want to propose to you that you change your ordinance here, or you do this differently on the upcoming comprehensive plan, which are like forward-looking things, which have nothing to do with what's being litigated. Correct, is more about past things. Would that not be appropriate if they had like a suggestion of an ordinance they want us to consider for something on the comp plan?
I think it would be appropriate at a comp plan committee meeting.
But they can't bring it to council and just say, we'd like you to take a look at this ordinance?
Well, I think it involves ordinance changes that would be reflected in the community's wishes for the growth areas of the town. I think it would,
So most ordinances have to be consistent with the comp plan. So ultimately, the idea when you're this is a perfect time, because you're gonna do that, is to kind of send things through the comp plan. Are these things that will be consistent, or how do we want this to look moving forward? I think that it might be challenging this time unless there's ordinances that are specific to things that you guys are dealing with. General ones, it probably makes a lot of sense to use the comp plan as that tool to look at this really comprehensively and not specific to that one moment.
So you're saying if somebody were to make comments of this nature that Sarah describes, I'm not sure that we wouldn't want to preclude them from giving those comments, but perhaps we would direct them toward the comprehensive plan process to see their comments maybe taken up in a more robust way.
I guess, I mean, I think that's great, and I think that's a great place to steer people, but again, just in terms of community involvement, which I always want more of rather than less, I would rather you know, if that works, if they can make the comp plan, maybe great, but if not, and they want to come and speak at public comment time and say, I'd like council to consider making an ordinance on this, I would want to hear, and just take a note, write it down, and, you know, do my own part to relay it on to the comp plan committee, so. I guess for me, more rather than less, for avenues for people to bring what their concerns are to us is good.
It seems like they would have that ability to do that, and then it seems like it's on us leveraging staff to understand if it, you know, where would this fit? I mean, that would presumably be our process to work back through, does this fit the comp plan? And if not, what, you know, does it make sense that edits be made there? So this seems like they would have that ability.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you,
All right.
Mel. Thank you, Mitch.
Okay, is there? Yeah, that I report to, any other public comment? In-house or online?
No hands raised online.
Okay, and if we are satisfied, we'll call for adjournment. Thank you very much. Thank you. Good job.
Thank you, Jeff.
Work.
A lot.